Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Testing 1 2 test. Test 1 2 testing 1 2 test. Test 1 2. This is Gigaohm Biological coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's June 5th, 2026. This is Steely Dan live from their Live in America album. This is Bodhisattva. See you in a minute. Battery warning here, so the guest pilot is going to bring down the drone. I apologize for that. That's probably my fault. I put it up too early, and so bring it on down, Matt. It's okay. Don't forget, you can turn the camera to face the bottom so you can see where you're landing.
Ha 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 ha! guy who fully expected to spend his life giving prostate exams.
Amazing, amazing. Well done, sir. That was really great. Thank you very much for that.
Eating a bat causes a Chinese flu, but don't knock it if you try it, is my message to you. I eat them flying rodents and I get a lot of flack, but once you go bat, you never go back. You may think I'm some sort of ghoul, but I'm just a man who's a bat-eating fool. I eat that bat all over this town. You can find me sleeping, hanging upside down. I like girl scrugs, but I prefer Lester flat. I like a T-bone steak, but I love me a bat. I never was much of a heavy metal dude, but me and Ozzy Osbourne got the same taste in food. If they sold bat at the Taco Bell, they fly out the window like bats out of hell. Try a little bat, you're in for a treat. That's why we call it the other black meat. In Georgia, they gave me a 10-gallon hat. First man ever ate a 10-gallon bat. When normal folks go hungry, they go to a Dunkin'. When I get hungry, I go spelunking.
It would be a little weird, right, if I put out a tune like this in 2020, like in February or January. It'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? It'd be kind of weird to put out a tune like that, I think. I think it would be kind of weird. And that's why I think it's important to start an independent bright web, and I'm trying to do that myself. With the help of a few friends. And that's what this show is. This is Gigaohm Biological. It's a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. We're trying to make our way toward the truth about recent American history. And that requires getting through a whole lollapalooza of liars. It's very windy, and my outdoor microphone is apparently not well shielded.
I think truth is good for kids. We're so busy lying, we don't even recognize the truth no more in society. We want everybody to feel good. That's not the way life is.
So I've been trying to make the point that podcasters can be recognized by their...
Hi, this is Christina. I'm with the Maha Transition Team. My phone number is 916-224.
I've been trying to make the point that...
Ask some preliminary questions and gauge your interest in helping us advance the agenda in D.C.
I've been trying to make the point that lots of people have called me, including the Maha Transition Committee, including Steve Kirsch, including Senator Ron Johnson, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. through the last 6 years to ask for help to understand what's going on. But even though I have very succinct explanations and answers for how the pandemic was created out of a known ongoing biological signal called all-cause mortality and an expected rise in that number visible in the population pyramids of all the countries in the West. And yet all of these people who have called to claim to want my help have turned out to be part of this exact theater. And in the experience of trying to change their minds or contribute something to what they claimed they were doing, it has now become obvious to me what was happening and how this works. There are people on stage, and their intention is to pull unwitting participants out of the audience, train them to the script, and let them do the work on stage, while the people that are actually scripted actors, the ones that are getting paid and compensated through a lifetime of privilege and membership in a class that we are not in, are stepping farther and farther back on stage while they let these new people who are very happy to be on stage and very happy to have the fame and fortune that goes along with being on stage to take over the narrative that they've handed to them on a need-to-know basis script. People trust the wrong people. And the one thing that I have going for me is that I am not very trusting I don't trust anyone because I know that everyone on earth, including my own parents, are liars. I grew up understanding that adults lie to other adults to create appearances that are lies. I grew up watching my parents do it, pretending that they're great, clever, charming, straight A kid was just because they are such great parents, when in fact I was a charming, straight A kid with a lot of manners and sitting up straight and saying please and thank you because my mom beat the shit out of me and beat the shit out of my sister. And I'm not talking about spanking when you do things wrong. I'm talking about abuse. And that's okay. We all have to live with the consequences of our actions, and the unfortunate consequences of my mom and my father's actions is that we're not that tight anymore. I left the house with no intention of ever coming back because I didn't feel like I really had something to come back to. But a couple of people that were willing to lie to everybody about who I was and what my upbringing was like, and I went through my childhood lying about it. It's not like I told everybody in my high school while I was class president for 4 years that I was also an abused child that still got slapped in the face and got my hair pulled and shit like that. I didn't tell everybody and brag about that. But my mom was so naive to the kind of, relationship that we had, that at some point in time during my high school period, she had a surprise birthday party for me and invited a bunch of people that really didn't want to be there. And during the whole birthday party, it was like a secret sort of uncomfortable moment where all the kids in the room knew that they wouldn't be there if they weren't invited for a surprise birthday party. If they were invited by me, they wouldn't have come. I wouldn't have invited anybody over. It was an illusion, an elaborate illusion. That's what my childhood was. And I understood very well that it was an illusion. And it was an illusion that I carried into college and didn't really know how to transition out of it being an illusion anymore. Because I was surrounded by people who apparently already knew what they were and who they were and proud of their family. And I'm an Irish Catholic person from the south side of Chicago, and I know all about it. And I had nothing. I didn't want to be what I was because what I was nothing. What was I? Nobody wanted me to be a Filipino. Everybody knew I wasn't white. I couldn't be a basketball player because I'm not black. So in Chicago, it's like, where did I fit in? Who am I? That is the whole definition of my childhood and young adult in Chicago, trying to find myself as a biologist, as a college student, as a pre-med student, or whatever I imagined myself to be, all the while trying to slowly balance out the fact that for my whole freaking life, I had been kind of lying about who I was and how great my family life was. And the camouflage was straight A's and being class president for 4 years and gonna be a doctor and funny and could make sound effects and knew all the birds. And he was just... I am a real person who really wanted to just be an academic biologist, really was struggling to figure out how to work within the ecosystem of academic biology when the pandemic started. And when the pandemic started, I really thought that I needed to speak up about the fact that we shouldn't transfect everybody. But of course, there was a chorus of liars on social media that people were arguing with and arguing about, and mysteries were being solved, and I got sucked into it in a way that I could never have understood, because the idea that social media was a theater in 2020 was just the farthest thing from my mind. I, like you and all the other Americans, and in fact all of the other adults in the free world, still thought that social media was just this thing that facilitated communication with some ads and some suggested people that you might think about following. But essentially, it is a tool or a app that allows you to build a social network that, with good discernment and good choices in who you follow, you can see reality. And this is a complete lie that I and everybody else fell into at the beginning of the pandemic, because the pandemic exercise was designed specifically to do that, to transition us to this fully virtual stage where Trump could be used against everybody in the first world to create all kinds of, elaborate stories about the motivations and the choices and the, the hoaxes and the stealing and the lies and the criminality and the, who's controlling who. And now we are in a sustained position where oil's not coming out of some place, and because this one is blocked or that's blocked, and we're being told that the prices that we see at the pump are a result of this, and the only evidence we have is from Plato's cave. You don't have any evidence that the Strait of Hormuz is closed because U.S. and Israeli bombed a school with a Patriot missile. That's what Plato's cave told you. Plato's cave told you that the U.S. probably bombed the school, even though it could just as easily have been Israel. It could have just as easily been Iran. Cooperating with Israel and America and Russia to create this illusion that drives the American public nuts, that it drives their own populations nuts, that allows them to motivate their populations relative to the illusion in America. And I'm starting to come to the conclusion that if this really is a global control grid, then Russia is also participating in this theater. That's why Candace Owens goes to Russia. That's why it's not to say that India isn't important. By its population pyramid, India has to be one of the most important sources of chess pieces in the world. And it's kind of an infinite source of chess pieces. You need more pawns? Go to India. You need a couple rooks? Go to India. You can't have infinite actors from Russia, infinite actors from Israel, infinite actors from the UK, but there are infinite actors available in India. And so China could also participate in this. If everybody's getting their piece of the pie of the collapsing American empire, then all of the interested parties are at the table. All of the interested parties are being informed about what the next move is in the theater so that they can best position their assets and their people to take advantage of that theater. And I have no doubt in my mind that that's the way it is. So the whole fight about who's doing what and who are the bad guys, it's irrelevant. It's a coordinated effort of all of the overclass members in all of the major economic centers of the world. It has to be. And that's why nothing ever actually happens, but just a drama on Plato's cave happens where Russia's the bad guy or China's the bad guy or nobody talks about India or Pakistan's the bad guy. And it's interesting because all of these countries in the Middle East that we're currently fighting against or allied with are all countries that have been drawn on a map by white man, by the white man. The white man drew the maps of the Middle East, and the people in the Middle East apparently don't give a shit. They haven't decided to take control of their own destiny and draw their own borders. India and Pakistan respect the border that the white man drew. All of the white man borders are respected in the Middle East, so the Middle East must be really tough and free, right? Those frickin' Shia and Muslims and the Sunni Muslims, they sure are free to do whatever they want and be terrorists and stuff. Except they respect the borders that the white man drew for them. But they're not the white man's bitch. None of these countries in the Middle East are the white man's bitch, but they respect the white man's borders, and they tell the white man's stories, and they respect the white man's flags. But they're independent. They're definitely, they do whatever the hell they want to. Do you see how preposterous it is once you hear it? That all of these people are scripted to tell you that the Russians are bad and the Chinese are bad and the Indians are good and the Pakistanis are bad and the Iranians they've been bad since the 70s. But all of these countries respect the white man's borders. All these countries respect the white man's oil. All these countries respect the white man's international waters. All these countries respect the white man's myths. Because that's what they are, right? Countries that are only 50 or 60 years old, whose borders were drawn by white men, are myths. And they respect those myths, and they work within the context of those myths. So they're not independent actors. Once you see
A new
it,
strain of COVID is infiltrating Melbourne with almost 400 Victorians in hospital and more than 100 nursing homes battling out.
now you can see, right, that this, you can see that this is a person improvising on a script that she
Right.
doesn't understand, right? You can
A
see
new
that.
strain of COVID is
I don't know why that's going out. I want to click this on a click here.
A new strain of COVID is infiltrating Melbourne with almost 400 Victorians in hospital and more than...
I'm going to change this one more time if you don't mind. I'm just going to fix this so I don't get it below my cover here. There we go.
A new strain of COVID is infiltrating Melbourne.
So what I'm showing you here is a video from a news program sometime in the years past in Australia where they're talking about a new strain of COVID. And what I want to suggest with the streams of this week, the entire week, is basically this stream, and I wanted to wrap it up really well on Friday with a good conclusion. America is the victim of a long con, and the long con is on a longer time horizon than any of us want to believe. It's like a 25-year time horizon that this modern media con has started, where they were ready for the population pyramid bump to hit the top, and when it hit the top, they were going to run the pandemic exercise. And so for about 10 or 12 years, they were busy selecting and auditioning and putting people in place on social and on regular media, and then crossing over into new media and independent media and outside of TV in order to be these voices that would say America sucks. And the idea of America was going to be sabotaged over that long period of time so that the youth that grew up from 2000 on would just grow up during this time when it really feels like the adults in the America are slowly starting to wake up to the fact that our country is an imperialist shithole and guilty of all kinds of crimes and all these other things. And so COVID, the pandemic, was a theater which was centered around the murder in America. The murder that occurred in America was portrayed around the world as evidence of the pandemic so that theater in other first world countries wouldn't require the murder. And so the lockdowns in Australia and New Zealand worked because America saw death and they didn't, but that was murder. And now when the new variants come along, it's much more real in their country, not because the lockdowns were so nasty and violated all of their rights, but because apparently so many more people died in America and in the UK than died in their countries. And so it's a hard argument to refute if everybody on television is totally 100% improvising on bad ideas that are not their own. And that's what happened throughout Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all these, Commonwealth nations that are first world nations but adjacent to America were turned against us with a theater that was the inversion of what happened in America. Hard lockdowns, no death, not so hard lockdowns or no lockdowns at all, and lots of death. But the death in America was murder. And that's it. They murdered people in America to create a pandemic around the world where, in the rest of the first world, their population pyramid didn't have a severe bump at the top that would require hundreds of thousands of people to be murdered over a couple years, like in America. But instead, they just had a bump, and that bump could be managed just with a little, extra massaging in the UK and elsewhere, all the while just covering up the murder of that bump in the population pyramid to prevent, these health systems from collapsing. Even the United States healthcare system used to have many, many thousands of extra beds in our hospital system back in the 70s and the 80s. And since the corporate takeover of our hospital system, all the beds have been reduced basically to just enough all the time. And that's, again, a for-profit healthcare system does. And so remember, it is a coordinated effort. If you have a state-run healthcare system like NIH or NHS in the UK, where a population bump could potentially cost a lot of money, you need to manage it. in a United States for-profit healthcare system where retirement is actually taken care of by state money like Social Security, which has been long time robbed already a long time ago, then you also have a situation where financially a bump in the pyramid could need management. So you can believe that this is bad improvisation on ideas that are not their own.
Hospital and more than 100 nursing homes battling outbreaks. It's called JN1 and the health department warns it's fast spreading. Nick McCallum spoke to the chief health officer a little earlier today.
Victoria has a new dominant variant of COVID-19. I'm joined by
now,
the
what
Chief
I
Health
want you to
Officer,
do here,
Dr. Claire Looker. How concerned?
What I want you to do here now is understand that the next image and video that I'm about to show you is from much longer time ago. And I'm going to give you an alternative interpretation for the video. And it's going to take a little bit for me to pitch it to you. But remember, these people
have from past infections or vaccines, this virus is better at avoiding.
And of course, one of the things is
improvising on a script about COVID was obvious. And when we look back, we can see it's obvious. But improvising on a script about sitcoms, improvising on a script about your track record as an actor, improvising on your script as a outspoken American patriot lady is very different. And what I'm about to show you is, I think, evidence that Roseanne Barr, already for 20 years, has been an actor who was recruited by India or somebody, recruited in order to be the voice that discredits America. First, of course, by lifting us up and then by dropping us on our face. And so I really think that this is something that you can really see.
So I want to go to another clip where this is another episode of Roseanne.
Now remember, this woman here, I have asserted, was recruited during Occupy Wall Street. And it was at that time that she was given a contract with whoever does this, maybe India, set up with her co-host. And here we go. Bob's your uncle. You've got funding. We're going to get you all around the world. Remember, she just had a movie made about her a year ago. It toured the world. It opened all around the world. She is a global truth teller. She's a global journalist that speaks to the UN and UNESCO meetings and this kind of thing. So I'm suggesting to you that the same reason why she promoted Mary Holland and Rand Paul and Paul Offit repeatedly from 2015 on, like she promoted Andrew Wakefield and Polly Tommy's, MMR vaccine bullshit via Mary Holland in 2015, that it's all one show. This lady in particular is at the heart of it because she's not a American patriot. She is a UN kind of person. She believes in global stuff. And so that's why she's got an Indian co-host. That's why almost half of her guests of any given month are Indian authors and Indian thinkers and this kind of bullshit. And now she has Roseanne Barr on, and what Roseanne Barr is going to tell you is that she's an unscriptable actor. The writers of Roseanne Barr wanted her to say stuff, but she wouldn't say it. So she says what she wants to say on Roseanne Barr. And now this is after the show. This is later. And so what we're supposed to believe is that Roseanne Barr is telling you the story of her show and what she did on her show. And now she's on this Traitors podcast, fake newscast on YouTube, telling everybody about how she is an unscriptable actor. I would suggest to you, and I think it's very, very likely, that she is one of these people who came up with the idea, who defined the idea of playing a parody of yourself in public in order to sell things. And so I would argue that Roseanne Barr's own fame is now, you can see it right here, she is somehow elevating herself under the false idea that she and her stand-up are some kind of patriotic, for the middle class speaking up. She is a domestic goddess, remember?
Where your character, Roseanne, has a chance to talk to her local state representative.
Hi, I'm Mike Summers, your state representative. How you doing?
Great.
Good. I'm going door to door trying to get to know my constituents.
Oh, door to door, huh? That takes a lot of time. Why don't you just go down to the unemployment office and see everybody at once?
I hear you. And you're right. We can't let this area's workforce lay idle. That's why bringing in new business is my #1 priority.
How?
Through tax incentives. See, we're going to make it cheaper for out-of-state businesses to set up shop right here in Lanford.
So they get a tax break?
Yeah, that's why they come here.
Well, who's going to pay the taxes that they ain't paying?
Well, you will, but you'll be working. Good, steady employment.
Union wages?
Well, now, part of the reason these companies are finding it so expensive to operate in other locations...
So they're going to dump the union so they can come here and hire us at scab wages, and then for that privilege, we get to pay their taxes.
Now, if you see my point, right, they used sitcoms to tell you what's coming. They used sitcoms to put somebody like Roseanne Barr before the internet in front of everybody to complain, to be the voice of reason, the comic, telling you the truth in the presence of the king, the jester telling you the truth in the presence of the king. But if you realize that the jester works for the king, then you can't take the truth that the jester's telling you seriously. And that's what you see Roseanne may have always been used for by Hollywood, and now by who I would call a foreign agent in Amy Goodman, a traitor to America with a long track record of promoting fraud that has ultimately led to Donald Trump's rise, the Maha movement. All of this stuff was facilitated by Amy Goodman's consistent promotion of people like Mary Holland and ICANN and Andrew Wakefield and Paul Offit, who are all one malevolent show.
Is your husband home?
Well, he's on the phone trying to keep us from losing our house. Hey, let's talk about that. See, we're broke. I can't even afford to go buy groceries unless it's double coupon day.
You know, we should talk about that. Oh, but I have several houses I have to get to before I quit.
Okay, great. I'll come with you. Boy, it's getting rough out here, Mike. You know, it's getting so my son is going to have to wear my daughter's hand-me-downs, and for real this time, not just for fun.
Oh, so her son wears girls' clothes just for fun back in the early, 2000s? What an interesting thing to just throw into the script. Remember, she's about to tell you a story about how she doesn't say things she doesn't want to say. So she's fine with talking about kids that cross-dress and just casually throwing that out there. It can be fun to put girls' clothes on, but now he's going to have to wear girls' clothes because we're so poor. Is that a funny joke, or is that a very clever way to put some governance into a sitcom? Let's listen to her explanation here.
There you were, talking to your state rep. This brings back memories, huh?
Yeah, I had some good lines, yeah.
How did Roseanne happen? How did this hit sitcom happen? You and John Goodman, the kids?
Well, you know, it was put together by the Carsey Warner team and Karen Mandelbach, too, I believe. And, you know, they just knew what they were doing. They had already were running the Cosby Show, and they had a million other really great...
A million other shows? No, they had the Cosby Show and a couple other ones, and that's all you need to know. We, in the past, as children and young adults, were governed by sitcoms. And the sitcoms are kind of like a podcast. They are scripted actors that have conversations about stuff, and the conclusions and experiences that they have about those things start to form working assumptions for the audience. And so when, I don't know, Theo on the Cosby Show has a problem with his girlfriend and, you know, she's breaking up with him or something like that, that experience is shared by everybody that watches the show. And so then at the water cooler, we can all talk about whether Theo was a man or not when he got broken up with his girlfriend, or, you know, I used to feel that way. And so sitcoms played that role. And interestingly enough, Roseanne Barr's sitcom played the role of introducing homosexuality into mainstream, introducing cross-dressing into the mainstream, and introducing the idea that oligarchs were going to screw us and there was nothing that we could do about it. We couldn't even vote our way out. It was all built into her frickin' show.
Shows on, and so they knew what to do, and they did it. They first, talked to me and asked. We talked about doing a show for working women, and they liked my stand-up, and so that's kind of where it all went from there.
I mean, but it's not just sort of kind of like, well, it just kind of happened, because it was huge.
Yeah,
in
it was
88.
huge.
I mean, the working class family, you're all about unions, you're all about feminism.
All about feminism, all about unions, and she just made a joke about unions there. Let's think about this a little bit more on a sort of timeline kind of way when I get back. I'll be back in just a second, okay?
This was very.
What time is it? Game time!
Yeah. Well,
Is that not playing? Why is that not playing? All right, let's get this started. Oh, I didn't even have that queued up. Look at how amateur hour this is. Well, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry I got my sound all screwed up here. Autism spectrum disorder is a myth used to make sure that intramuscular injection is never questioned as a methodology, that virology is never questioned as a science, and that public health is never questioned as a reason. The same thing can be said for pandemics and gain of function. They are also myths. And if you realize this, you will start to see why podcasters who believe in these myths cannot be real. Ladies and gentlemen, the cheese is free on social media. The reason why it's free is because it's a trap. It's a trap for your mind. There is no way through, and biology is the way out. Ladies and gentlemen, Gigaohm Biological is the biology they ignore. Welcome to the show. It's the 5th of June, 2026, and I will keep informing you. I have to always end the stream at roughly 2 o'clock because I do have a date with my sons at the basketball court. I am attempting to transition from a online biologist to a basketball playing biologist. I'm not going to stop streaming, but I want to have some fun too. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who Mark Kulak is out of Boston, Massachusetts, please find out. It's Housatonic Live, HousatonicITS.com, and it is a YouTube channel called Housatonic 2. We are here fighting the same battle we've been fighting for 6 years. We just didn't understand the battle. We didn't understand that we were up against a military weapon, a Lollapalooza of liars, and your children are up against that Lollapalooza of liars as well. And so that's why I feel really obligated to do this show. This is the fifth in a row, and so we're back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. RNA cannot pandemic. Intramuscular injections are dumb, and transfection in healthy humans was a crime. Population pyramids are real, and podcasters are not. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you live from that crazy starship again. Just trying to remind you that you can't change the script of the Star Trek Enterprise. It doesn't matter how much you tweet, it's not going to change. And if you start to think about your favorite people on social media as on a Star Trek set instead of on social media as real people, you'll start to understand why actually you can't affect the theater. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have a website, stream.gigaohm.bio, where a sort of YouTube clone is used to provide the videos without ads and without personal data. Please use that if you're not watching live. And you can watch live also on PeerTube, of course, but it's especially useful if you're not catching it but watching it later, because then you won't be distracted by the rest of those platforms' content. This is my resume. I was a longtime academic biologist. I've worked for Children's Health Defense and been a scientific consultant for the now Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've been asked to present as an expert 3 times to the South African fraud group, Pandata. They lost all those presentations. My work has been misrepresented as the work of Woodhouse 76 on the now debunked and defunct, deleted Substack called Woodhouse 76. She's now started a YouTube channel where she's uploading some videos of mine. And I've informed her that she is still a traitor and a liar. And so I think she's probably going to stop, but who knows? Maybe she'll keep going. And I've also been courted to help Jayanta Bhattacharya over several broken science meetings. I've come to understand broken science and the guy who invented CrossFit, Greg Glassman, as a at least unwitting fraud, a kind of clown who was made incredibly rich during COVID because he apparently tweeted Floyd 19 during the Floyd protests and then got his account banned or something like that. And then also there was this takeover or sale of CrossFit, the business, and he made, $250 million from it. And now, he lives the fattest life, starting Broken Science, then changing it to Metfix, and, doing the whole conference scene, just like CHD. And it was during COVID where he invited me to his house for private parties, like Peter Thiel does, and you feel real special because everything's paid for. And then Jayanta Bhattacharya just showed up and started asking me to stop talking about people's names all the time, stop saying names, just stick to the biology and stuff. One of those Broken Science parties even had frickin' Steve Kirsch there to come and talk to me. So Greg Glassman of CrossFit was recruited the same way that a lot of these other people were recruited. They were given an extraordinary amount of money in order to stick to a spectacular story, origin story, a new origin story. I became rich because I tweeted and then people got mad at me. And so instead of getting canceled, I just sold my company and now I'm super rich. And I want to help JJCouey. I think he's really smart. So I flew him to my house a couple times and gave him tacos. And that's supposed to, I guess, signify that we're friends and that he believes in me. And that's the same thing that his second in command, now the person who runs Netflix, Emily, whatever her name is, also said. I really respect your work. I think you're totally great. But of course, she worked with Dr. Drew before the pandemic. So we are dealing with a lot, like many more than you can imagine, frauds that are willing to lie to you. Willing to bring you to their house and lie to you. Willing to lie to you with a bunch of other people that are lying to you. And unfortunately, involved in that Broken Science story is none other than the skateboard god himself, Rodney Mullen. They used Rodney Mullen to get me to think that Greg Glassman was a legitimate dude and that I just got invited to Greg Glassman, who was starting this legitimate thing called Broken Science, and it was all about p-values and stuff. And at some point in time, Rodney Mullen kind of pulled himself out from between us. And I think that's because Rodney Mullen is actually a good guy who's tried to help these people several times in the best way that he could, tried to stick to his morals and principles. And I don't think he ever lied to me. I just think he never was really honest about why he was in my house and why he wanted to know everything and who he would tell after I explained it to him. But that's what they do. But do I think Rodney Mullen's a bad guy? No, I think Greg Glassman is a bad guy. I think Greg Glassman and his friends probably used Rodney Mullen against me. And Rodney Mullen, if anything, now in retrospect, probably feels pretty shitty that he allowed himself to be used by Greg Glassman, the absolute shithead. And yes, I am calling Greg Glassman, a $250 million rich American, a shithead because he lied to me for 3 years and lied to my kids, lied to my wife, about why he flew us out to his house, telling my kids that their dad is a hero. This is a major league shithead. Just like this guy is a major league shithead, but less so. Because I actually think he is surrounded by people who know, including people like Gavin DeBecker, including people like Robert Malone and Meryl Nass. Do you know that the lawyer for CrossFit is the same lawyer that worked with Meryl Nass and Robert Malone about the original anthrax vaccine shit? He was the lawyer for CrossFit China. Does that make sense? Or does that sound like a very nasty network of national security state actors that pretends like, oh, I don't know, we have CrossFit gyms all around the world. You know, in every city where we have an embassy, we've got CrossFit gyms. CrossFit has been training the military for a long time. But the guy who has the attitude about that defines CrossFit is a guy who can barely even walk. Greg Glassman is not an athlete except for when he rides a bike, but he's the guy who invented CrossFit because he's such a hardcore. Or maybe he's just the son of somebody who was in this whole system already a generation ago. Now he's playing a role because his family was involved. He claims to have grown up and played on the same playground as the kid whose dad worked on the suitcase nuke. I'm sorry, but every one of these people is going to go down. Every one of these people is going to have to deal with the fact that they lied to me and I'm not dead. And because I'm not dead and I'm not going to be dead for a while, I'm going to be saying over and over into any camera in front of me and any interview that Greg Glassman is a fraud. That Jayanta Bhattacharya is a fraud, that actually Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is probably just a kind of a not very smart guy with an elaborate vocabulary and addicted to so many things he can't even think for himself anymore. And he was taken advantage of by this whole group of grifters, including Del Bigtree, who's actually directly connected to the largest private investment firm in the world, Lazard. That's who put together ICANN for him. It's not a grassroots thing. Same reason why Children's Health Defense will never tell you where they get all their money, because it's not a grassroots thing. He's not a grassroots thing. That book's not a grassroots thing any more than this book of Robert Malone is a grassroots thing. And unfortunately for my wife, you know, she married a guy who saw the aliens. I have seen the aliens in America. I am an American who's seen them. I know who they are. I know who the traitors are. I know what script they're running. And I know how it's done because they tried to do it to me over and over and over again until finally my very slow brain caught up and realized how it was done. And that's why I have all these selfies with all these people, including this one of my favorite ones. Where is it? Right there. That one, that guy right there, Asim Malhotra, has just been in front of Congress, in front of my home state of Wisconsin. Well, not anymore, but it used to be. That's where I was born. The guy who called me in April of 2022 asking me for help, Senator Ron Johnson, just put this fraud in front of the Senate to testify about bullshit, which we'll look at later. And this guy at the second CHD conference in Georgia was avoiding me all weekend, walking this way, walking that way, until I finally just stopped him while he was walking full speed past me. And I said, shouldn't we take a selfie together? And he said, sure, why not? So what did he do in that one little instance? Well, he admitted that he knew me already. It's actually the same thing that happened when I went to the hotel in Boston where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to announce his presidency, candidacy for president. And so I used it as an excuse to visit my friend in Boston, Mark Kulak, and we both went to that thing. And on my way into that hotel through the revolving door, out that revolving door that I was going in, came a 6'5" guy who looked me right in the eye and said, "Holy shit, you're a lot bigger than I thought." And who was that? Well, that was Andrew Huff. And Andrew Huff was at the Boston announcement with Charles Rixey, the guy that came to my house and told me that the diffuse proposal was real and I should join Drastic. You know, that group on Twitter that's almost all Indian liars with the HIV inserts and the PhD and master's thesis from Wuhan. That's why we have an Indian fraud at the head of NIH, ladies and gentlemen, because this has been an elaborate collaborative hoax with India and China and America and the UK and the Commonwealth. It's all It's all the controlled demolition of America being orchestrated by traitors who were put in place a long time ago. That's why there's a book in 2008 from Skyhorse Publishing with a 13th chapter which suggests that this guy could be a vice presidential candidate and become president if the presidential candidate got shot. That's not an accidental chapter in fiction. That is a prediction because it is a script. And if America is going to get out of this, you have to understand that we have been on this stupid script for a long time. Obama, and then Trump, then Biden, and Obama. At least 16 years, we have been governed by scripted actors, if not before Obama, which I think is very true. And there you have it. Basically, since 9/11, we have been governed exclusively by scripted actors in the executive branch, which are wholly aware of the national security state plan to invert our sovereignty to experimental animal status. That's where we are. And my resume includes years and years of trying to communicate with these people, thinking that social media might someday work for me, but it doesn't work because if they agree to lie, your family and friends stand no chance. If all the teachers at your school are willing to lie to your kids do not stand a chance. If all the adults at the family reunion are willing to lie to those kids, then those kids don't stand a chance. And the unfortunate thing, ladies and gentlemen, is the same pattern holds true for adults. If you go on to Plato's Cave and you imagine that all the people that you see on Plato's Cave are real, then if those people agree on things, you will start to agree with them because that's how the human brain works. Unless, of course, you've been raised your whole life to understand that adults lie, including the adults that are closest to you, then maybe eventually, after getting beat over the head for 6 years, you might come to understand how this theater works. But if you were lucky enough to grow up with parents and grandparents and sisters and brothers that you could trust, that didn't lie behind your back or lie to adults about what they did to you, then maybe you would have a much harder time seeing through this. That's why I think I've got work to do. That's why I'm teaching this course, because I think the biology is a great way to see how malevolent the exaggeration and the oversimplification has been. You can find ways to sign up for this on my website at gigaohmbiological.com. You can either buy a link to the virtual show or you can buy a link to show up in person, but make sure you pay for the right one because we are trying to count. We only have 120 seats for the actual event. I don't know if this is where I wanted to go. Is that the next slide? Background. Oh yeah, that's right. And so this is really what it's all about. I think the population pyramid is the thing that everybody, all the kids, all the high school kids, all high school biology classes should start with a population pyramid. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that all American history classes should start with a population pyramid so that every time you turn the page and you went to a new chapter, they would show you the population pyramid at the start of this era. Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, imagine a history book that at the top corner had the population pyramid of the population that they were discussing, so that when you looked at the history of China, you could see it. You looked at the history of Russia, you could see it. You looked at the history of Scotland, you could see it. You looked at the history of America, you could see it. Now that would be a frickin' history book, because then anticipated rises in all-cause mortality would never be misconstrued as something else. I don't know, like a plague or a war or something like that. Or maybe you could even see a time when you had extra men, so that it was time to go to war. Whereas if you didn't have extra men and the population pyramid told you that you were vulnerable, maybe you wouldn't go to war. Ladies and gentlemen, America is being run by a false social media theater, and that's my main message. And the way that I intend to help you and your children pull your heads out is to teach the biology that these people oversimplify and exaggerate. The people that have done the oversimplifying and the exaggeration include a lot of very deep state actors like Stephen Hatfield, but also not so deep state actors, but just kind of deep state adjacent actors like the son of Les Weinstein, like Brett Weinstein, the son of Les Weinstein, Eric Weinstein. They play roles on stage, but I don't think either of those guys is read in on the exact, circumstances of the theater. Instead, they are wholly aware that their role is to sustain that theater and actually be, the focus of both sides of the theater. Because these two are very, very okay with there being a whole cadre of people on the internet that considers them complete and total frauds. They go on working and they don't even care that that's existed. Now, on the other hand, I only have one of those people. The only person who says that is a fat Englishman who lives in Japan, and he's been saying it for 5 years, but he hasn't said it in like 6 months because, again, his very existence discredits everybody. It discredits Stephen Hatfield. It discredits Robert Malone. It discredits Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It discredits Jeffrey Sachs. It discredits all of these people who are in this UN Commonwealth of Nations adjacent theater, which is trying to convince the young people in America to hate themselves because they're American. That is the illusion. That's why Brett Weinstein and his wife always refer to the West and not America, when in reality, the controlled demolition of America is being used as an anchor to drag the rest of the Western nations down into total chaos. That's what this is. And maybe they'll use also the EU in chaos to, continue to get the US to move in that direction as well. It's all theater that is used against all of the different sub-audiences. That's why it's a Lollapalooza of liars, and nobody's not in on it.
Reasons, but expecting to be stuck in place, sheltering in place for.
And so this timeline of all these people is extremely important, especially for me personally, to constantly clarify that I'm not crazy. I tried to change these people's minds and they just ignore the ideas that I put in front of them, the potential gains that they could make in terms of their goals, the stated goals of saving children. They don't make any progress because making progress would score goals, right? So instead what they're doing, and I'm trying to teach this well, is that they're putting people in front of them. They're giving their legitimacy to others, other actresses and actors that want to be on stage, and this is how they do it. This is what they wanted to do to me. They wanted to bring a bunch of people that I would think were real onto my stream, like Kevin McKernan and Mary Talley Bowden and Sasha Latipova and Jessica Rose. They all came on my stream in 2022, except for Kevin McKernan, who came on in December of 2021, 3 weeks before his scripted agent, Charles Rixey, came to my house in Pittsburgh and tried to convince me to rejoin Drastic and say that the diffuse proposal was real. That's all bullshit. That's all bullshit. It's all part of this really stupid State Department DITRA show that is coordinated by Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan. But also, longtime Department of Energy employee Brian Hooker at the scientific head of CHD. That guy is one of the nastiest frauds in all of America, and I say that with great regret, because at one point in time I really, really cared for that guy. And now I know without a doubt that he is a scripted fraud who may have believed in Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but I doubt it because I think he's much smarter than that. Just like Meryl Nass never believed in him, knew what he was being used for. Just like Robert Malone never believed in him, he knew what he was being used for. And here we are. And there's only one American really on earth that has the real professional experience during COVID to show you that this is true. And these people legitimize these new actors by either promoting them by going on their show like Buckley Carlson did, or attacking them. Laura Loomer is making this woman real by attacking her and calling her a foreign agent working with Buckley. So it becomes real. Again, stage actors yelling at other stage actors, that's still theater.
Great will in doing so.
Listen, I have an idea, okay? People get very weirded out about this stuff, but I don't know how much you know my character, but I just don't care. I always say what I think and let the consequences apply.
So she's kind of like Roseanne Barr. She doesn't give a shit. She's an unscriptable actor. And what's she going to say again?
I believe that the only option we have here is a revolution. So somehow American people have been conditioned into believing that violence is always bad. It's always bad. Really? Because history only proves that without violence, there is no change. I mean,
history proves that without violence, there is no change. And I don't think that that's true. I think actually our founding fathers wanted to establish a system where that wouldn't be necessary anymore. That's the point. And this is not an American. It's a foreigner posing as an American, and it is traitorous Americans that are allowing her to do it. While at the same time, again, remember, right, the most absurd people on the internet are allowed to say that the most absurd Americans, like Laura Loomer, who nobody takes seriously, is allowed to say that she's a bad guy. But Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and JP Sears are all saying that she's a good guy, despite the fact that in two separate podcasts, she's arguing for revolution. She wants a violent revolution in a country she is not in.
Unhappy citizens of your country, but domestic terrorism doesn't exist. CIA came up with that for a reason. Because now they can arrest you when you say that.
So she says that the CIA came up with domestic terrorism so that they can arrest domestic terrorists. Interesting. The CIA is always the answer.
I don't like your policies. I don't like that you are making me a slave, right? That's the only reason domestic terrorist as a sentence exists, right? As this idea. So civil disobedience is a thing. It's actually a very legal thing. No one can arrest you for it.
Civil disobedience is a real thing. It's a real thing, and nobody can arrest you for it. If civil disobedience involves breaking a law, you can most certainly be arrested for it, you frickin' scripted retard. We are in a lot of trouble, ladies and gentlemen, because I assure you, she's not the only one that these people are promoting. It's not the only one that this MAGA movement is going to put in front of them and seed into the narrative for these younger people who are naive and don't understand that there's a pyramid scheme here, a pyramid scheme of credibility. They are laundering their way up to the top, faking it until they make it. And I am exactly the opposite of faking it until I made it. The moment I started streaming, I had already made it because I wasn't faking it. The moment I got on my bike and started riding to the University of Pittsburgh as a faculty member and doing journal club on a bike, I was legitimate, doing legitimate things with my legitimate adult experience and expertise to try and contribute some little thing to the world. These assholes are exactly the opposite.
It is there just for this reason. Attention, it's called civil disobedience, not peaceful protest. Peaceful protest didn't get us anywhere. It never gets us anywhere. So it's crazy to...
You can see that he's actually very uncomfortable with this bullshit, but he doesn't know how to do anything about it because remember, they're improvising together. So you can't say no. I've told you this before. Unfortunately, even my high school teaching career has experiences that are applying directly to understanding this very unique theater that's going on here.
How Hollywood, Washington, and all these separate bubbles that are connected are telling you the same thing. No, you're a Christian. You have to obey by the rules. You never can be violent. You have to turn the other cheek. They somehow forget that Christianity actually also says if your family and you are threatened, you have all the rights to defend yourself.
Is that what Christianity says? That's a strange thing to say, isn't it? Isn't that a bizarre thing to claim? Wow. I mean, we don't need to waste any more time with her.
Up to the moment, I was late.
What I find really funny is that I showed you these guys yesterday, and they're also arguing about Elizabeth Lane, and these guys are both special forces guys. At least this one down here started podcasting after he went from special forces to Wall Street, which is already kind of dumb, right? That doesn't make any sense. But more importantly, they are talking about her dunking on him, but notice that they're not at all concerned about her repeated calls for violence. These two military guys who definitely claim to be Americans who understand what that means are not saying anything about, she's a shitty foreigner. Instead, they're saying something about her calling the FBI. Remember, here she is on a podcast with a guy that was just promoted by Ian Carroll, because Ian Carroll's trying to get off stage so desperately because he understands that he was used. He understands that he's a fraud, and his best bet is to get off stage and make sure that people start following other people, like the Dre dossier or this dipshit. And curiously enough, I stumble into this, and here she is talking to him about these two guys, and then instead of these two guys doing what real American patriots should do, they take her very seriously. They reinforce her backstory. They reinforce her as a meddler, and they, I guess, assume that she just does stuff. And she just does stuff with Tucker. And she just does stuff with Candace Owens. And she just does stuff with Meryl Nass. But who the hell knows who Meryl Nass is? So these two guys, with all their training and all their Wall Street experience, can only get so far as her social media posts about them. They can't get any farther than that. Isn't that weird? It's almost like they're scripted traitors, like they're frauds, like these two guys right here, the older millennial and Gary, are actually just frauds with beards and guns in the background. They're no different than Candace Owens. They're just lower on the totem pole with a much shittier Substack and a much less populated Patreon page. That is remarkable. And I'm begging you, send this clip to the older millennials. Send this clip to this Gary guy. Because they are traitors to American children until they pull their head out of this farce and realize they're being played. They still think Trump is real. They think Candace Owens is real. They think all these people are real. They're just nasty. And that means that they're desperate to get on stage. They want on stage. Please invite us on stage. And when they get invited on stage, what will happen? They will have guests. These guests. So yeah, we have lots of people that are being seated, and they're not real people, right? I showed you, for example, that Cody is not a real person. He's just on their script. He agrees that Tucker Carlson's just a bad guy who got away with it for years, despite, I guess, most people not wanting to pay attention to liars. He's been famous for 20 years, and that's just ridiculous. That's not how the world works. Just like, a fraud like this in 2020 talking about COVID in a random place in Pittsburgh is just as fake as a former research and development director of a part of the Human Genome Project now standing in a random place in front of tourists in Massachusetts saying that the worst biological crime in history has happened and nobody cares. These people are fake, and the only people who see these two assholes are the people who needed to see these two assholes, and everybody else doesn't know who they are. The vast majority of Americans do not watch the Danny Jones podcast, so they didn't see him go on and say that Charles Rixey's a hero, that Alex Washburn is a hero, that Tony Fauci's a lab leak and guilty of it, that it came out of Wuhan. You didn't hear that, but now we have the Indian NIH director saying the same damn thing. And we have Nick Fuentes seeding the narrative for the children so that Clavicular and Sneeko and all these other people like Hassan can go in front of younger audiences with a layer of legitimacy because, everybody agrees that Nick Fuentes is somebody important, and everybody agrees that Nick Fuentes argues with people, so these guys must be important. And this shit about Nick Fuentes going to the club with Clavicular or in Sneeko, or Hassan going to some conference and meeting all these people, including his uncle, and talking real smart to them on camera, is exactly the same as the Young Turks setting up a performance where Alex Jones crashes their set and Roger Stone is off camera, mic'd up, ready to go, and Jimmy Dore walks up and spits in Alex Jones's face. If you think this is real, then you think Alex Jones is real, you think the Young Turks is real, you think Roger Stone is real, you think Jimmy Dore is real, you think that Anna Kasparian is real, or you just choose a subset of these actors and think that Alex Jones is a liar, but the Young Turks is a real organization. And then you lose. Just like if you think that Sneako's fake because he's a Muslim and Cavicular's fake because he's an idiot, but Nick Fuentes just means well, then you lose. Choose Sneako and not the other two guys and you lose. Choose Hassan and you lose. There is no one on stage that you can choose and not lose. Because podcasters are not real people, and those podcasters can't point to you over the course of a timeline and tell you all the things they learned and when they learned it, all the experiences that changed their mind and when those experiences happen. None of those people can do what I'm about to do. Okay? In 2013, Brian Hooker didn't call it autism. He called it vaccine injury. He called it neurological damage, and that was when he was still just fresh as an employee at the Department of Energy, where he used to transform and transfect plants to make medicine, probably cannabis, which is what Kevin McKernan of the Human Genome Project now works on as a geneticist. And they are collaborating against America as national security actors, both of whom were employed by the Department of Energy. In 2014 is when Brandy Vaughn first got started. In 2015 is when Brandy Vaughn started to have billboards. 2016, 17 had Brian Hooker and Mary Holland and all of these people on stage with Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark when Brandy Vaughn was saying it right. And in 2015 is when Mary Holland was first introduced to America on Democracy Now! As the American version of the Polly Tommy Andrew Wakefield MMR scam. And in that program, she was already promoted with Rand Paul and already promoted with Paul Offit, who literally 11 years later would still be doing the same bullshit shtick with the same bullshit script. In 2018 is when Brandy Vaughn was on Dateline in Australia, and she was in an empty apartment where she was already struggling to kind of figure out what to do with all these people who were frauds. She was dealing with this Larry Cook asshole who dated her for a while and then didn't. In 2019 is when a lot of this history goes black, but actually in 2019 is when James Lyons Weiler was in front of a camera a lot saying that autism is a complex phenomenon of genetic and environmental causes that we might need to find the genetic vulnerabilities for. And then in 2020, the bullshit started. In 2020 is when I started speaking out in the halls of a United States medical school about the idea that there were other coronaviruses, overlapping immunity, and transfection would be a terrible thing to do. This is just ridiculous. And then I was told I shouldn't come in anymore. And that was when I lost my career. In 2021 is when I struggled to figure out what was going on because there were a lot of people interacting with me, including Piper Stover, who I now understand to be an Indian agent working with the State Department and India and America, because she did a podcast in 2019, right before the pandemic, with Richard Verma, who used to be the Indian ambassador and who used to work for Hillary Clinton in that State Department. And then that podcast led to her coming to my house and trying to influence me and hooking me up with Brett Weinstein in 2021. I would be in a Signal chat with Brett Weinstein in 2021 until long after he had Drastic and Weinstein, and Kirsch and Malone and Pierre Corey and all those people on his show in 2021. And then in the December of 2021 is when Kevin McKernan came on my stream. And then in January of 2022 is when I had already said that the diffuse proposal is fake and that Drastic was fake. And then Charles Rixey came to my house with the diffuse proposal and tried to beg me to say that the diffuse proposal was real and that Drastic was real and that I was still a member of it. And then in 2022 in April is when Robert Malone apparently told Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Ron Johnson to call me on the same day, because that's what they both told me is the reason why they called me. And they said that they watched my stream when Charles Rixey was on, and that's why they want my help. Soon I would be hired by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CHD for those 2 years, 22 and 23, to work for them on that book, which I say is fake, and I figured out it was a false premise during the writing of the book. Then they fired me in January of 2024, and then for 2 years straight, I have been under the sole support of the people who support this stream. Nobody else. And we have been doing this because we need to get this truth out. The truth of how America's own recent history has been distorted in our own minds because we all acquiesce to the use of Plato's cave. And because there are a whole lollapalooza of liars, of scripted actors that have told us these stories and enacted these dramas that have forced us to and coerced us into accepting their working assumptions. Nobody can do that. Who's going to do that off the cuff? What podcaster can do that off the cuff besides me? Let's look at this.
Where you, this is another episode of Roseanne.
Here's the video that I showed you at the beginning of this stream, right? This is the video at the beginning of this stream where she's talking about being a real fighter for unions and for workers and for the middle class and for the struggling people in America who can't afford to buy groceries and are unemployed. Let's see if we can draw a timeline here.
We can't let this area's workforce lay idle.
That was in 2011.
Is my number
okay?
one priority.
She gets recruited by Democracy Now! As part of this Indian-based, Indian-funded, Indian-augmented show that is going to slowly convince the young generations in America to hate themselves. She gets recruited a couple years before Mary Holland shows up and is on Democracy Now! But it's already a couple years after she was recruited. The Democracy Now! Lady was recruited at Occupy Wall Street, which is the same time that Luke Rudkowski was recruited and the same time that Tim Pool was recruited. From the same place and the same operation. Now let's fast forward to the pandemic.
Really takes it really just removes the filter. Once you've been canceled, you go, I got nothing, so I'll become.
So here we have Roseanne Barr on a no-name podcast called Tommy on Rumble only with someone by the name of Robert Malone, who's selling his CHD book with the lion of the Indian intelligence service behind him, the star postdoc of the greatest Indian geneticist of modern times, Inder Verma, the guy who was selling a vaccine in India. You know, Bannon also has connections to India. And so these people are on a podcast. Why would she be podcasting with that guy? If we already try to draw a straight line from being a person who was going against the wishes of Hollywood, not reading the script she was told to read so that she could fight for the American middle class and stand up for the unemployed, now she's on a podcast with Robert Malone and this guy. What has she got to say?
Even more lethal.
Well, I don't like your terms of words there, because I don't think it's...
Robert Malone has a forced smile on his face because his job is to make sure that everybody thinks that Roseanne Barr is just the greatest. Hilarious.
It's lethal.
Not lethal.
Unless you think it's lethal to the devil, the father of lies, then yes,
I
will.
Lethal in terms of truth,
that,
shooting at the heart. Lethal to the bad
heart
guys.
of the beast.
Yes.
The heart of the beast.
It's a good,
shots to the heart of the lying beast.
It's a good lethal.
The beast is just all a lie, so every lie feeds it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the beast is real, and the beast is real, and there is the beast, and there is the father of lies, and so yeah. We have to fight him. It doesn't sound that dissimilar to Scott Shara and Amazing Grace. Always Satan is real. He actually came to my live event 2 years ago and showed a cartoon of Satan.
It's made up of lies, and so I don't like lies. I like truth because one thing, the older you get, you can't, once you start lying, you can't remember what you said.
So if she's been lying about who she was since 2011, when she went on already in 2011, went on Democracy Now! And pretended to be an actress that wouldn't put up with things, that an actress that fought for the unions, an actress that fought for the middle class, and now she's here, then what she's actually saying is a lie. And it's no different than what Tucker Carlson does. I've lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. I think it's really important not to be a liar. I hope I'm not a liar. And that's all she's doing here, is just saying, I really like the truth. It's not that I don't lie, but I really like the truth.
Can't remember your lie.
Isn't that the Winnie the Pooh quote? If you just tell.
No, it's not a Winnie the Pooh quote, you frickin' unread retard. It is a Mark Twain quote. And if I can recommend a Mark Twain book to you, I definitely think you should read A Tramp Abroad. That's one of the best books in American literature. A Tramp Abroad.
Tell the truth, you don't need to remember anything. That's my excuse for being an idiot.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Dr. Malone?
Yeah, so I agree that when the most dangerous person in the world is the one that has nothing to lose.
Correct.
And when they've already pulled out all the stops to attack you.
Isn't that funny? They've already pulled out all the stops to attack me. They already actually pulled out all the stops to get me on board, including putting my name in a book in hopes that I wouldn't, look a gift horse in the mouth. But I did. I started calling them frauds because that's what they are. If they hire you to help them write a book and you start telling them that the book is being written wrong, and then they tell you, well, it's for the next book, they're frauds. Ladies and gentlemen, America is under attack. We are being subverted. We are being...
And to ridicule you and gaslight you and deplatform you, it sets you free. You no longer have to worry about whether or not they're going to gaslight you and defame you and ridicule and deplatform you, because they've already done it.
It's liberation.
And you survive. And once you realize that the worst that they can do to you, well, there's always something worse. But for the most part, if they do all that stuff to you, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and Atlantic Monthly and Rolling Stone and yada, 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 they all write their nasty little snark. And yet people still want to hear what you have to say.
So he's talking from personal experience. We're supposed to believe that he is a victim. He is struggling. He's lost everything. And now he gets in the New York Times and Rolling Stone and stuff like that. And that's just all par for the course for somebody who loses everything and has nothing to lose. He's got all kinds of things to lose. He has a multi-million-dollar horse farm at the foot of a national park. He has a lot to lose. He has a Substack that's one of the most lucrative Substacks on the platform. He has a lot to lose. Just like Roseanne Barr has a lot to lose. He's a liar. This is one of the worst Americans alive, and he has traveled the world misleading the entire first world. If you're not from America right now and you know who this guy is, you have been misled by him. If you're not from America right now and you know who Roseanne Barr is, you've been misled by her. If you're not from America and you know who Tucker Carlson is, you've been misled by that American. Let's go on.
Whether
they eat babies. That is not bullshit. It's true.
So is that the same lady that was here on Democracy Now! Saying that she was doing so much for America and believes so much in America? Is that the same lady as that's right here that says that she believes in the truth? Or is she acting on this stage and not on this stage? Or acting in the show, but not on Democracy Now? Or is she playing a parody of herself in all scenarios, a parody of herself on the sitcom and a parody of herself in person, such that the parody of herself can say whatever her puppeteers need her to say? If she needs to fight for the middle class, she can. If she needs to fight for the truth with Robert Malone, she can. If she needs to say that they're vampires with Tucker Carlson, she can. This is not the track record of someone with integrity. This is the track record of an actor who is also paid to act in other scenarios, other contexts.
It's not just the dogs and the cats, not just the pets.
It's not just the dogs and the cats.
It seems likely that Tucko will pivot to reforming Vance the moment Vance is allowed to distance himself from
Now, what's interesting
Trump.
is that because of Mark Kulak's work, I've come to understand Tucker Carlson and Roseanne Barr as being quite connected, because they are connected through the ladies that run Talk Magazine and ran Vanity Fair. So if you understand this connection, that Tucker Carlson worked for the lady that ran Talk, which is the same lady that probably recruited and trained the young Candace Owens, and is the same person who coordinated a lot of what had to do with Princess Di, but also selecting the person that would ultimately be Meghan Markle. And Tucker Carlson has direct connections to her and this Anna Wintour, who actually runs Vanity Fair, I believe. And Vanity Fair, of course, is the very American news source that when Tucker was still on Fox was the one that reported who Drastic was. And then that Vanity Fair article was reported on Fox by Tucker Carlson, where they didn't say that Drastic was a group of Americans that included Charles Rixey and Jonathan Couey. They said it was a group started by a Frenchman and also an American by the name of Jamie Metzel. When in reality, X groups or Twitter groups can be only started by one account, and that account is Billy Bo Stickson, who we still don't know who runs that account. But the website is in Thailand, run by a guy in Thailand, and most of the data that Drastic produced was produced by an Indian couple. One of them was named Mona, and this guy named The Seeker, who was also essentially an Indian guy who apparently could read Mandarin and found this PhD thesis that said that they like Batcave viruses. And so while Cody is kind of innocent in the sense that he's just a victim of extremely skillful social media use, he is part of the theater, because he is telling you that MAGA and Tucker and all of these people are just real people, that they're just assholes. But it's not a theater, it's just assholes. And we have assholes in America and we're stuck with them, and that's not what it is. He doesn't have to understand that the intellectual dark web is a concerted military kind of effort, a style of privatized military control.
10 times more with Trump. What else?
But the fact that somebody like Professor Dave on YouTube is out there also saying that the lab leak, the idea of a lab leak, that all of these people, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the NIH director from India, are saying is the most likely explanation for the pandemic. There is this guy on YouTube who's made a success of attacking these frauds, but only seeing them as real, like the Brett Weinstein boys. Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein are Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein. They have nothing to do with their dad, and Professor Dave has no idea who their dad is, because he's paid not to. He's paid very specifically now to say the other half of the story, that the lab leak is still bullshit, that Peter Daszak is still a good guy, that Tony Fauci is a good guy, while on the other side of the coin we have people saying it's a lab leak, including the NIH professor or NIH director. And this cognitive dissonance in America is what they now want to twist into a violent civil war in any and all cities that they can twist it into. And that's why you see these influencers that, you know, are lower in the pyramid all talking about how this is falling apart, including those two operators that are talking about Elizabeth Lane, but not calling her a traitor for calling for violence. Instead, standing there and podcasting with a bunch of guns behind them. We are being set up for a violent civil war, and they will put violent people on the street in order to tell us that a civil war has started. They will have podcast actors tell us that a civil war has started and that they witnessed it, experienced it, got hurt by it, their house burnt down from it. I don't know. That is definitely coming, and that's for sure, because the same scripted actors that I said were going to say it's a lab leak 4 years ago are now saying it's a lab leak this year. And so I'm telling you, in the next couple years, there is going to be a scripted theater on social media that will be represented as a civil war on the streets. Whether it's in France or in America or both, I don't know, but it's coming. And I assure you that all of these podcasters will agree that it's real. It's just a question of whether the Jews are doing it or not.
No, Fauci wasn't full of shit at all. That's the narrative that was spun to assign a boogeyman to distract from the mountain of anti-science propaganda surrounding the pandemic and vaccines. When you say COVID was a giant lie, what the fuck are you even saying? That viruses...
Who says that we don't know what made people
All
sick?
characters and events in this work are purely fictitious. Any resemblance to real person...
Sorry, I got to go back because I realized I missed something here. Unfortunately, I have to go all the way back to this video right here because this video I will play out and you can hear them mention a couple people that I think are important to hear them mention. They mentioned them in 2023, so let's listen to this video again.
So
really
I want to
takes
go to
the
another
just
clip where
it really just
this is
removes the
another
filter
episode
once
of
you've been
Roseanne,
canceled. You
where
go,
your
I got
character,
nothing,
Roseanne,
so I'll
has
become
a
even
chance
more
to
lethal.
You get. You can't, once you start lying, you know, you can't.
The most dangerous person in the world is the one that has nothing to lose.
Correct.
And when they've already pulled out all the stops to attack you and to...
I'm going to take a risk here. I don't want to not address what I was going to address. So it says in the chat, Transmo says, I get that everybody's lying, but it's a conversation killer when I suggest we don't know what made people sick during COVID. I know what made people sick during COVID. Number one, people get sick. Number two, if you go to the hospital and your primary symptom was that your pulse ox measured on a $5 meter is lower than 96 or 94, like the FLCC protocol said, you should go to the hospital and seek help. If they gave you supplementary oxygen, chances are you develop pneumonia from it. If they gave you supplementary oxygen, chances are it became painful at some point, especially if the supplementary oxygen was given without humidification, which it often was. You can even see it on video in New York City in 2020 with Kyle Seidel showing you a picture of him administering oxygen without humidification at 60 liters a minute. And if they did this in old folks' homes, they killed your grandmother. If they did it in hospitals, they killed your aunt, because when they developed pneumonia, the expected outcome of high flow pure oxygen, as it says in textbooks, then they blamed that pneumonia on a viral pneumonia, which doesn't exist. Then they didn't give you antibiotics or give your aunt or your grandmother antibiotics, and then she died of pneumonia, and they called it COVID. They also probably did this with midazolam. They probably did it with remdesivir, but the point is that no one will tell you that the primary way, the easiest way, the most foolproof way to do it was with pure oxygen in place of a ventilator shortage. And then when the pain from the pure oxygen gets high enough, they can tell you that, well, we could put you on a ventilator and then you won't be in so much pain. And so I am telling you how people died. People were killed by opioids on the street, and those numbers were distorted into a life expectancy drop that our own NIH director, the Indian trader, Jayanta Bhattacharya, can't seem to do the math for. And at the same time, people were killed by protocol in hospitals. And the protocol problems were not all one thing, but they were all under the pretense that there could be and was a viral pneumonia for which antibiotics would be inappropriate. And that working assumption alone, combined with a ventilator shortage, a need to stop spread, and the use of ventilators to stop spread, resulted in a catastrophe, very specifically in America, which was used around the world to indicate that there was an impending danger that could result in 1 billion people dead. So let's listen to this. Again, I want to go back a little bit and listen to this.
So I want to go to a...
Just really takes the... It really just removes the filter once you've been...
Yeah, so I agree that when the most dangerous person in the world is the one that has nothing to lose.
Correct.
And when they've already pulled out all the stops to attack you and to ridicule you and gaslight you and deplatform you, it sets you free. You no longer have to worry about whether or not they're going to gaslight you and defame you and ridicule and deplatform you, because they've already done it.
It's liberation.
And you survive. And once you realize that the worst that they can do to you, well, there's always something worse. But for the most part, if they do all that stuff to you, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and Atlantic Monthly and Rolling Stone and yada, 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 they all write their nasty little snark. And yet people still want to hear what you have to say.
Remember, we already understand now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was promoted in Rolling Stone in 2016 specifically so that there could be this controversy about measles outside of the United States where he supposedly killed people, and that somebody like Paul Offit could go on Democracy Now! And explain how he killed people, and then talk about how the Rolling Stone article is fake or not fake. And they all did it. They all used it because it's all the same show. And so here he is telling the same story and claiming that this book is part of the fight against that stuff instead of the fake fight against that stuff that everybody is getting sabotaged by. The con. This is the con. These people are all part of the con. And even though he's not smart enough to know what's happening, he knows he's part of the con. Tommy's a piece of shit. And this guy is a guy who's a compound piece of shit because he's willing to use people like Tommy.
Whether you're sharing comedy, because comedy is absolutely one of the best weapons. Comedy is absolutely a 5th generation warfare weapon. And J.P. Sears knows it. Roseanne Barr knows it. And
J.P. Sears knows it. Interesting name drop there, right? Interesting name drop there in 2003.
By the way, High Res the Rapper knows it. If you saw today's new rap video.
Oh, High Res the Rapper. Let's see what rap video was released in what time again? Where are we here? This is March of 23. Then they did this video in September of 2024. And then we are now in 2026 where Tucker's a fraud on the left. And it's still, lab leak is still ridiculous because that's just a story that was made up by Bannon in order to cover up for Trump's incompetency. It's exactly the narrative that I said, with exactly the conclusions that I said, with the exact actors portraying both sides of the theater, as I said almost 4 years ago. And the reason why I'm able to say it is because I tried desperately to help the fake anti-vax movement and came to understand it as one contiguous part of this show that includes Roseanne Barr, that includes Democracy Now!, that includes Paul Offit, and all of them are part of the same malevolent sabotage of American conservatism, American populism. Here's that video that he mentioned.
Is coincidental and unintended. The views and actions expressed by the characters do not reflect the beliefs or values of High Res LLC or its affiliates.
Welcome to the Chamois Year 2030.
Brought to you by Liza.
I hope you have your bug protein and VR goggles ready as you sit there owning nothing, because you're in for a treat tonight. We have many celebrities in the house that we tell you you care about, and they pretend to care about you.
Now, does it make more sense to you that actually Elizabeth Lane is directly connected to these people? Because Elizabeth Lane was in a frickin' movie with Tom Arnold, the frickin' husband of Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr podcasting with Robert Malone. Robert Malone making videos with this guy? Are you kidding me?
And they're definitely not mouthpieces of their puppet masters used to promote various vested interests. Definitely not that. So without further ado, let's get into our first category. And the Best Rap Group of the Year award goes to the Backstreet Boys.
Oh, there's Aaron, Nurse Aaron from the 2022 Journeyman Pictures bullshit about what was going on in the hospitals in New York City. And sometimes she goes by the name of Aaron Malone, which is really weird, isn't it? Who else is in this frickin' video? Dom Lucra? Are you kidding me? Another huge X account.
Hey, you'll own nothing and be happy. I'm your new mommy and daddy. See what happens if you getting in the way of what we planning. Extort the house and send.
So do you see why I think Greg Glassman is also directly in on it? Because Dom Lucra is a guy who makes a lot of money because he has a good Twitter account. Greg Glassman became a multi-millionaire because of a stupid tweet that was part of the show that led to Twitter being bought by Elon Musk to save free speech during COVID, which is, of course, bullshit. But it's the same show because all of these people right now in this video are primarily on X.
Implement a social credit. You can see where this is headed. It's a global Armageddon. Lock them down for climate change, but we still flying private planes. Go to sleep, you little sheep.
There's Luke Rutkowski. Luke Rutkowski, who was on Tim Pool's podcast for a long time, has his own show now. Holy shit, recruited at the same time as Democracy Now! And Tim Pool after Occupy Wall Street. There is Robert Malone's wife. Why in the hell is she in this video unless she knows she can't get caught?
We don't want you wide awake, banning every car with gas, but then we charge a carbon tax. Pretend that we confused when everybody gets a heart attack. Make the kids sad and depressed. Tell the men have ass and breasts. Make the women masculine. You'll enjoy having less.
Luke Rutkowski had a 4-page article about him in 2008 in Radar magazine with a staff that was formed. Well, come on!
Penetrate the cabinets, you're either privileged or oppressed. Fly to islands to have sex. Whoops, forget that I said.
Flying to islands to have sex. So they're already queued up on Whitney Webb's book, you know, the Epstein Files bullshit already in this video. Impossible.
So you got droplets. You actually have to wear a few masks on your backside, on your rectum, because the drop, someone coughs, so and across the country, across the world, it could go in the toilet and actually come up your toilet, and it actually get you sick.
Okay, so who's that guy? That's a guy by the name of Stein, right? So let's go
Get you
on.
sick through the rectum.
What has
It's called
Stein
rectum.
been doing? Well, Stein has been going on Australia's, Lefties Losing It show, Sky News Australia. He's a regular guest in Australia telling Australians that, yeah, America's pretty fucked up. I'll tell you all about it.
It's time for Lefties Losing It, and we're going to check in on the man who so desperately wants to be president, not satisfied with first ruining San Francisco as mayor before causing untold damage to California's governor. Gavin Newsom has his sights on bringing that level of dysfunction to the rest of America, and he knows just how to relate to every crowd. Here he is in Atlanta with the mayor, who happens to be black, so Gavin assumes his SAT score must be terrible.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. And, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech.
That's called the bigotry of low expectations, folks. Yes, that's how Gavin Newsom relates to folk in Atlanta, by commenting on how dumb he is academically and how he can't read due to his dyslexia. Now, the mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, is running cover for Newsom.
What I'm trying to illustrate here is that the flip side of the media in other places in the first world is distinctly anti-American, making fun, parodying America. And they have American traitors that they employ. The same American traitors that are involved with Robert Malone are going around the world representing America on these news programs with these news people. And that is very traitorous. But it is a scripted theater of traitors.
Then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
Young kids in the Bronx.
Young black kids growing up.
That even to say was defrauded. This job is accountability in sport.
To share new.
Mehdi Hassan and
yeah, I think that he should be fired.
Has such a nice hockey team who had just been
making fun of the hockey team.
Talking about director should also be involved in the world.
Union speech on Tuesday.
In their own sport at the Olympics. You've got to love that.
You know, I have a lot of American pride just watching Jack Hughes hit that golden goal at the end because, you know, Canada historically has been, their whole identity is wrapped up in hockey. And
so now he's going around the world for 5 years, just like Robert Malone, or 6 years, just like Jessica Rose, just like all the Canadians and all the New Zealanders and all the Australians, and they are on a script that says America sucks, that Fauci leaked the virus, that there's contamination in the shot. All of this stuff points back to an American fraud, an American flub up. The American system is broken, and these Americans are employed by outside forces to represent this idea around the world, and Robert Malone is at the center of it. Kevin McKernan is at the center of it. ICANN is at the center of it. CHD, Children's Health Defense, is at the center of it. And this little tiny operation started way back in the 2000s and late 90s with Andrew Wakefield and Polly Tommy. And those people are frauds because Paula Aitken is real. Those people are frauds because Jonathan Couey in Pittsburgh is real. Robert Malone is a fraud because Jonathan Couey in Pittsburgh is real. And that's why you should go to GigaOhmBiological.com and find a way to support this stream any way you can. Would be great. We're in big trouble because we have this guy.
But I'll tell you the story I really want you to cover.
This guy is still scripted to say that the FDA is covered up and the FDA is bad because part of the script is to wreck the FDA, because the FDA is in the way of personalized genetic medicine, which is the next generation of transfection, which Robert Malone and all of these people are very much hip to. And this guy just might be somebody who's ready to retire and is willing to play a role. But I guarantee you he is a traitor on a script. And if he's too dumb to understand it, he should have called me again, and he didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Don't forget, we have the frickin' NIH director on stage saying it's a lab leak.
It was, I mean, we can point fingers, but like the collectively, that's the root of the crisis we currently face. The honest engagement with the fact that public health failed at its critical moment, to have an honest engagement and discussion about the crisis we are facing.
This is an American traitor improvising on a script that he doesn't understand, and he is still a great weakness to these people who are sabotaging our country. This is one of the most vulnerable points because he is a complete and total fraud. He cannot do the job that he is purportedly doing, and his existence there is evidence that we have been sabotaged. America has been sabotaged. We are being distracted by Trump and this bullshit in the Middle East, when in fact our entire system is probably being dismantled from the inside, and the last assets and value is being removed as we speak. So somebody's got to start doing something about it. Some journalist has got to step up and put this in a newspaper, because I'm a real guy in a real place, and that place is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Jonathan J. Couey. Thank you very much for supporting my work. Thank you for attempting to share this with you. Please do not forget that podcasters are not real people. They are scripted actors. They are on a need-to-know basis script, and that's how you can see them. I hope you're not taking their word for it, and make sure you think about whose word you are taking for all of this. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to play you out with a song that seems appropriate for the beautiful sunshine outside. This is Don Henley. Thanks for being here. you very much for joining me, everybody. Thanks for being here all week. If you've missed it, I did a lot of stuff this week. There's a lot of stuff to see and listen to, and I didn't waste much of the time. So if you stopped midway in some of those shows from this week, please go back if you have time and watch the rest, because I've been hitting some home runs. If I do say so myself, I've been hitting some home runs this week, so don't miss those minutes. And I will not promise anything this weekend. If I show up this weekend, it's bonus, and otherwise I'll be back on Monday for 5 days in a row again to keep the pressure on and keep getting ready for August. I can't wait. August 21st and 22nd, there will be a class, live and virtually, taught by me. I hope you will join me. Thank you very much for being here. Shout out to everybody supporting this work. I can't thank you all enough.